Hello, my name is William Teal. I was the project manager for the development of the road transport HSE case for Ziauddin Energy. And what I'm going to talk to you about today are presentation materials for the monthly safety topic. So that you can effectively present these materials each month, we decided to provide you some additional information and an example of presentation of the first month's topic so that you can use that in preparing for presenting each of the topics each month. Each month, you're going to be delivered materials for presenting the monthly safety topic, including a PowerPoint presentation, potentially some videos, posters, and a presenter's guide that describes the philosophy and the means and methods you're supposed to use to present the topic each month. What I'm going to talk to you about today is step 2 of the process that's in the presenter's guides, having to do with the exercise around the bow tie that you're supposed to provide each month with the safety topic. Where this material comes from is the road transport HSE case. And the purpose of what we're trying to do is to make sure that we tie all the communications materials back each month to the basis in the road transport HSE case where it came from, so that we can get people everywhere talking in the language of the HSE case and understanding the concepts the way that they were produced in the HSE case, so that people can identify hazards, threats, consequences, and controls in a consistent manner so that they understand the basis upon where all this communications material came from and can more effectively use it each month. Each month, all the materials that come into the communications campaign are going to come out of material that we developed in the road transport HSE case. And we used a tool called BowTies to develop the controls and identify threats and incidents and consequences in the process of completion of that work. So what a bow tie is a fault tree and an event tree. On the side of the fault tree, what you have are hazards, major accident hazards that can result in serious incidents. Threats are things that can release major hazards. And the way to think of threats are, these are root causes. If an incident was to occur and you were investigating it, the threat that releases a hazard would almost always be the root cause of the incident. So hazards are things in the world that we really typically can't create or eliminate. Things like environmental threats, physical hazards, chemical hazards, electrical hazards, things like that. We can't eliminate those, but we can control the threats that cause them to be released. And that's where these controls come in. In the road transport HSE case, we tried to identify the single and multiple controls that would prevent single and multiple threats from releasing hazards and getting from hazard to a major incident. So that's the fault tree side of the bow tie. On the event tree side of the bow tie, we've got the serious incident that occurred and the major consequences that could result from that incident. These are typically, in the case of road transport, things like serious injury or death to a Ziauddin Energy employee or contractor, or serious injury or death to a third party that's involved in an accident. The controls that exist on the event side of a bow tie exist to either mitigate the damage that could be caused by a consequence occurring, or allow us to recover to a state where a single incident won't become another incident later on. Now, all of the definitions of controls, consequences, incidents, and everything are provided on the bow tie that you'll be using each month. And I'll show you that now. What we're trying to do each month is tie the material that's in the communications campaign back to the road transport HSE case where we developed it. And you'll be doing that each month using specific examples having to do with the topic of the month. Your presentation of the bow tie each month shouldn't take more than a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes to get through. What we're trying to do is identify the specific hazards that could exist in the environment, things which would potentially cause harm, and tie those then to the consequences, threats, and controls that we'll present each month. In this case, overtaking, driving a vehicle at say 60 kilometers an hour, presents a specific physical hazard, that is, the motion in vehicle itself. A vehicle moving at 60 kilometers an hour presents a physical hazard to occupants of the vehicle if it gets in an incident, pedestrians, and other drivers. Okay, this exercise is meant to be interactive each month. So what you want to try to do is get the audience to tell you examples of threats, incidents, prevention controls as you produce them, and you want to try to steer the discussion toward the hazards, threats, and controls that will be identified in the presenter's guide each month. So in the relation to overtaking another vehicle at 60 kilometers an hour, you'd want to ask the audience, can anybody think of a threat that would release that hazard of the moving vehicle at 60 kilometers an hour? Allow the audience to tell you their examples, and when they come up with an example that is the lack of skill of the driver, either write or stick that on the board. Just put it onto the bow tie that you'll have available to you. So if a driver lack of skill released a hazard, physical hazard of a vehicle in motion and caused an incident, what sort of incident would that likely cause? Then get the audience to try to tell you the type of incident that that would create. It's highly likely that that incident might result in is a head-on collision. The next thing you want to try to do is say, if a driver lack of skill, that threat released a hazard resulting from the movement of the vehicle, and it resulted in a head-on collision, what kind of consequence might be created? What's the worst negative outcome that could come from that incident? They will almost undoubtedly say single or multiple fatalities to the driver of the vehicle and the other person that they hit. So if driver lack of skill released a physical hazard of a vehicle in motion, resulting in a head-on collision that caused multiple fatalities, then we want to try to develop the kind of prevention controls we can create or put in place to prevent driver lack of skill resulting in a head-on collision resulting in multiple fatalities. Now, what are the kind of examples of things that we do to put in place to control the threat of driver lack of skill? Here, invariably, you will come up with driver training or defensive driver training as the primary example you're looking for. When somebody brings that example up, put defensive driver training up on the bow tie. Right, so let's say that despite all of our best efforts in driver training, we still had an incident resulting from driver lack of skill, giving us a head-on collision that potentially could cause a multiple fatality. What's the last line of defense that we've got to prevent a head-on collision becoming a multiple fatality? Invariably, someone will come up with a seatbelt, which is typically our last line of defense, and it's a mitigation control to prevent people from getting killed if head-on collisions occur despite all of our other best efforts. That discussion of the bow tie didn't take too many minutes, and that's really all we want you to go through each month. We just want to try to get the audience to participate in identifying hazards and coming up with the threats that could release those hazards, identifying the incidents that could occur as a result of those hazards, and the consequences that could result from that incident, as well as the prevention and mitigation controls that we develop to try to prevent and mitigate serious incidents from occurring. That's all you have to do each month, and you'll have a bow tie available to you to do it, and each month the topics will be identified with the threats and consequences and incidents that you're supposed to focus on each month that will tie in directly to the communications campaign material that's available in the form of the overhead presentation, the videos, and the posters that'll be available. That's all I wanted to talk to you about. Thanks for your time.